Are we saved by faith alone? The answer to that question is yes.
All right, let's hear it.
Paul talks about this a lot in the New Testament. And if you want to go look up these verses for yourself, you can go check out Romans chapter 3, verse 28, Romans chapter 4, verse 1 through 5, Ephesians chapter 2, verse 8 through 9, or Titus chapter 3, verse 5.
All right, so let's take a look at the verses that he mentioned and see what they actually mean. So the first verse he mentioned was Romans 3, chapter 28. And I'm not going to read them out just for the sake of time. But what St. Paul is saying here is very simple, that you cannot earn salvation through your own efforts. Salvation is a gift from God, not something that we can just achieve ourselves. But that does not mean works do not matter. It means that just good works does not buy you salvation. He then mentions Romans chapter 4, verses 1 through 5, and just take a look and just read these verses real quick. Here, St. Paul is speaking about Abraham and says that Abraham was counted as righteous because of his faith in God. But Abraham's faith was not just belief in God, because his faith led him to obey God. For example, Abraham left his homeland when God called him, and he was willing to offer his son Isaac because he trusted in God. So Abraham did not just say he believed, he truly lived out his faith in obedience. And that is why the Bible calls him righteous. He then mentions Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 through 9, and this is a very common one that people like to bring up. But notice what it says. It does not say that we are saved by faith alone. It says we are saved by grace, and grace is a salvation that comes from God. It is a gift that we cannot earn. But people always tend to leave out the very next verse, verse 10. And this verse says that we are created in Christ Jesus for good works. So what this means are that good works are a result of real faith. The last verse that he mentioned was Titus chapter 3, verse 5. This verse says that God has saved us not because of our righteous works, but because of his own mercy. No amount of good deeds can just force God to save us. Salvation begins with God's mercy and grace, not our human effort. But the verse does not at all say that works are just meaningless. In fact, right after this verse, St. Paul continues to talk about how believers should actually live. He says believers should be careful to devote themselves to good works. So a key takeaway from this whole thing is that belief is not the same thing as real faith. Because as we all know, even the devil believes in Jesus, but that does not mean that the devil will get saved. Just think about it like this. If you have kids, do you take care of them because someone is forcing you to, or because you genuinely love them? And faith works the exact same way.